The midday sun blazed mercilessly through the narrow streets of San Jose del Guaviare, a small town lost in the Colombian foothills. Camila Ortiz was putting new merchandise on the shelves of the hardware store where she had been working for 7 years. Her slender fingers carefully arranged the colorful plastic containers as her mind drifted to thoughts of her upcoming evening with her husband. Over the past few weeks, something had subtly changed in their relationship. Mauricio, her husband, had become more irritable, often staying late at the hospital. Camila tried to explain it away with complicated cases and hard work. It wasn't easy being the only surgeon in a small-town hospital after all. The bell over the front door jingled and an elderly Senora Ramirez, a regular customer, entered the store. "Good afternoon, Camila," the old lady said hello, heading toward the shelves of cleaning products. "How is your husband doing? Haven't seen him in town in a while." "Thank you, Senora Ramirez, working hard," Camila replied, trying to keep her voice sounding carefree. "Can I help you with your selection?" Talking to the customer helped take her mind off her anxious thoughts. The day stretched slowly, filled with the usual routine, arranging merchandise, helping customers, keeping sales records. Camila loved her job for its regularity and predictability, for the opportunity to communicate with people. Every corner of the store was familiar to her to the smallest detail, from the creaky floorboards at the cash register to the slightly leaning shelf in the far corner. At 5 o'clock in the evening, she closed the store and headed home. Her and Mauricio's small house was a 10-minute walk away in a quiet part of town. Camila stopped by the market on the way, buying fresh vegetables for dinner. Mauricio had always loved her beans and rice. The front door of the house greeted her with silence, so her husband hadn't come home from work yet. Camila turned on the kitchen light and started cooking. As she sliced tomatoes, she remembered how she'd met Mauricio 8 years ago at a town fete. He had just gotten a position at the hospital, enthusiastic and full of plans for the future. They married a year later, and the first years were filled with happiness and mutual understanding. The sound of the key turning in the lock snapped her out of her memories. Mauricio entered the kitchen, and Camila immediately noticed the shadows under his eyes and the tense line of his jaw. "Rough day?" she asked, stirring the beans. "Yeah, complicated surgery," he replied briefly, not looking at his wife. "I'm going to take a shower." Camila escorted him out with a look. He used to always kiss her on the cheek when he came home from work, tell her about his day, ask about her business. Now it was as if an invisible wall had grown between them. Dinner was almost completely silent, broken only by the clinking of cutlery. Camila tried to strike up a conversation several times, but Mauricio answered one-wordedly, immersed in his own thoughts. "How about we watch a movie together?" she suggested when they had finished eating. "I'm sorry, honey. I'm too tired. I'm going to go to bed early. Tomorrow is a complicated day." Mauricio got up from the table, leaving his dinner almost untouched. Camila was left alone in the kitchen, mechanically putting away the dishes. Through the open window came the sounds of the evening city, the barking of dogs, the distant voices of neighbors, the noise of occasional cars. She wiped her hands with a towel and went into the living room. On the mantelpiece were their wedding photos. They were both so happy, young, in love. Camila ran her finger over the frame, wiping away the dust. Not a sound came from the bedroom. Camila turned on the television, turning the sound almost to a minimum, but she couldn't focus on what was happening on the screen. Something was definitely wrong, and that something was gnawing at her from the inside out, keeping her from resting. Could it be that Mauricio was having problems at work, or was something troubling him? Why wasn't he sharing with her like he used to? At 10 o'clock, she walked quietly into the bedroom. Mauricio was lying on his side of the bed, turned away from the wall. His breathing was too ragged for a sleeping man, but Camila didn't say anything. She lay down, trying not to make any noise, and stared into the darkness of the ceiling for a long time, listening to the night sounds of the house and the city outside the window. Sleep wouldn't come. Her head was spinning with scraps of thoughts, memories, trying to find an explanation for her husband's changed behavior. Maybe tomorrow she should talk to her father. He always knew how to give the right advice, to look at the situation from the outside. Yes, it was decided. Tomorrow she would tell him about her worries. The clock on the bedside table was well past midnight when Camila finally fell into a restless sleep. She dreamed of an empty hospital corridor where she ran, trying to catch up with her husband's receding back, but he remained out of reach, as if disappearing into the white hospital light. The morning was overcast. Heavy leaden clouds hung over the city, promising rain. Camila opened the store at 9 o'clock sharp as usual. The night had been restless, and a slight headache was a reminder of that. Mauricio had left early, not even having breakfast, citing an urgent surgery. The first few hours of work dragged along at an unusually slow pace. Camila went through the invoices, checked the balance of goods, wiped the shelves. The radio on the windowsill quietly hummed old romantic ballads, which somehow made her feel even drearier. Around noon, the bell heralded the arrival of a visitor. Camila looked up and saw her father, Esteban Ortiz, a tall, trim man with a noble gray on his temples. He held himself with that special confidence that years of successfully running a business give. "Dad?" Camila said in surprise as she stepped out from behind the counter. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Does a father need an excuse to visit his daughter? Esteban smiled, but his attentive eyes studied his daughter's drained face. "You look tired, little one." Camila tried to smile back, but the smile came out unnatural. In the presence of her father, always understanding and supportive, it was becoming harder to contain the anxiety of the last few weeks. "I have a lunch break in 15 minutes, she said. "Why don't we sit in the cafe across the street?" Esteban nodded and began looking at the window display while Camila finished up with the last customer. Soon they were sitting at a table in a small cafe that smelled of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. "What's going on, Camila?" Dad asked as the waitress brought their order. "I can see something's wrong." Camila cradled the coffee cup in both hands as if trying to keep warm. A fine rain began to drizzle outside the window, the drops drumming quietly on the cafe's visor. "Mauricio, he's changed, Papa," she said quietly. "It's like he's a different person lately. Almost never speaks to me. He's always late at work, and when he comes home, he goes straight to bed." Esteban frowned, his fingers tapping lightly on the tabletop. "How long ago did it start? Maybe a month ago? At first I thought it was just fatigue. Working at the hospital is hard. But," Camila stammered, choosing her words, "before, even when he was tired, we still made time to talk, to be together. And now—" An unsolicited tear rolled down Camila's cheek. She hastily wiped it away with a tissue. "Yesterday he didn't even touch the dinner I made, and it's his favorite meal." Esteban reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's palm. "Have you tried to talk to him about it?" "Tried, but he keeps avoiding the conversation. Says everything's fine, that I'm making up problems out of nothing." The rain intensified, turning the street outside the window into a blurry gray canvas. Camila remembered how she and Mauricio used to love to walk in the rain, hiding under the same umbrella, how he used to kiss the raindrops off her face. "You know," her father's voice brought her back to reality, "I've been friends with Ricardo Santos, the head doctor of the hospital, for years. Maybe I should—" "No, Dad, please," Camila interrupted him. "I don't want you to get involved. At least not yet. Maybe I really am exaggerating." Esteban shook his head, but didn't argue. He knew his daughter well. Stubborn like her mother, she always tried to solve problems on her own. "All right, sweetheart. But remember, I'm always here for you, any time of day or night." They spent the rest of lunch talking about lighter topics, her father's business, the city news, the upcoming renovations at the store. But the anxiety never left Camila, lurking somewhere deep inside. Back in the store, she mechanically performed the usual actions, but her thoughts kept returning to her father's words. Maybe she should have told him more. About how Mauricio had started locking his phone, something he'd never done before. About the strange calls during which he would go into the other room. About how she'd woken up several times in the middle of the night and caught him with his phone in his hands, hastily extinguishing the screen. The day was drawing to a close when a young woman Camila had never seen before entered the store. She was tall, slender, with long dark hair arranged in a flawless style. She spent a long time choosing kitchen utensils, and then, while paying, she looked at Camila strangely as if studying her. That look haunted Camila all the way home. There was something disturbing, almost hostile about it, though she couldn't explain why she thought so. Could it be that her nerves were frayed and she was seeing things that weren't there? At home, she was greeted by the familiar silence. A note on the kitchen table announced in Mauricio's handwriting, "Complicated surgery. I'll be late. Don't wait up." Camila crumpled the slip of paper and tossed it in the trash. He used to always call if he was running late. He used to take a moment to warn her in person instead of through a note. Before. She turned on the TV, trying to drown out the silence of the house, and started cooking dinner. For herself, alone. Mauricio Estrada parked his car in a familiar spot outside the hospital. The gray building of the San Jose del Guaviare Medical Center loomed before him, 3 stories of cracked concrete and faded paint. He adjusted his shirt collar and entered through the service entrance. He was greeted in the residence room by Angela Mendoza, the head nurse who had worked here for 15 years. "Good morning, Dr. Estrada." She handed him a folder of case histories. "We have 3 scheduled surgeries today, and an emergency patient came in with appendicitis." Mauricio nodded, looking through the paperwork. His gaze stopped on an unfamiliar name on the staff list. "Mariana Velasquez. Who's that?" "New nurse," Angela answered. "Transferred to us from a clinic in the capital. Today is her first day." At that moment, the door to the residence room opened and a young woman in an impeccably pressed medical uniform entered. Mauricio recognized her immediately, the same visitor from his wife's store. Their gazes met and something flashed between them, some spark he couldn't explain. "Dr. Estrada? I'm Mariana Velasquez." Her voice was soft, with a slight huskiness. "Pleased to meet you." She held out her hand, and when their fingers made contact, Mauricio felt a chill run down his spine. He'd held her palm in his for too long, and Angela noticed it, frowning. "Marianne will be assisting you in your surgeries," the head nurse said. "She has a lot of experience in surgery." The day began as usual, rounding patients, filling out paperwork, preparing for surgeries. But things were different now. Marianne moved beside him like a shadow, professional, collected, but there was a special undertone to her every movement. She fed the instruments a little slower than necessary. Her fingers accidentally touched his hand. Her gaze lingered on him longer than necessary. During the appendicitis operation, Mauricio caught himself admiring the curve of her neck over the mask, the way she deftly handled the instruments. It was as if she was reading his mind, anticipating his every move. "You're doing a wonderful job, Dr. Estrada," she said after the surgery, as they washed their hands in the pre-op room. "It's rare to find such professionals in the capital." Mauricio felt paint flood his face. He couldn't remember the last time he'd blushed at a compliment. "Thank you, Señorita Velasquez. You are also a very experienced nurse. Please call me Mariana," she smiled, and mischievous sparkles danced in her brown eyes. Mauricio's lunch break was spent in the cafeteria, where Mariana joined him as if by chance. She talked about her work in the capital, about the complex operations in which she participated, about her ambitions in medicine. Her enthusiasm reminded him of his own when he was just beginning his career. "And why did you move to our small town?" he asked, stirring his cooled coffee. Marianne was silent for a moment, her gaze becoming thoughtful. "Sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward," she finally replied. "There is too much bustle in the capital, too many conventions." At that moment, Angela entered the cafeteria, and the atmosphere changed instantly. The head nurse gave them an attentive look, and Mauricio suddenly felt uncomfortable, as if he had been caught doing something inappropriate. After lunch, there were 2 more surgeries. Mariana worked flawlessly, but now held a more detached, professional manner. Only sometimes, handing over the instruments, she threw him such glances that took his breath away. In the evening, filling out the last documents in his office, Mauricio heard a knock on the door. It was Mariana. "I was just leaving, doctor," she said, standing in the doorway. "I wanted to thank you again for today. You're a pleasure to work with." She smiled that special smile that was meant only for him and walked out, leaving behind a light scent of perfume. Mauricio leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. Camila's face came to his mind, tired, worried, with that sadness in her gaze that he had begun to notice lately. He pulled out his phone, wrote a quick note saying he'd be late and wouldn't make it in time for dinner. He needed time. At night he lay awake for a long time, tossing and turning from side to side. Camila was breathing quietly beside him, but for the first time in their life together, the close presence of his wife did not bring peace. A different face stood before his eyes, with brown eyes and a mysterious half-smile. Mauricio knew that something wrong, dangerous was happening, but he could not stop. The next morning he left the house earlier than usual, barely touching the breakfast Camila had prepared. Marianne was waiting for him at the hospital, focused, professional, but with that special spark in her eyes that was meant only for him. A new day was beginning, and with it, a new chapter in his life, a chapter that threatened to destroy everything he had built over the years. Sunday morning was particularly sweltering. Camila was preparing breakfast when she heard the sound of a car pulling up. Looking out the window, she saw her mother-in-law's black sedan. Gloria Quintero de Estrada never gave any notice of her visits, believing she had every right to show up at her son's house at any time. Mauricio was still asleep after a night's duty, and Camila, wiping her hands on her apron, hurried to open the door before her mother-in-law started ringing the bell. "Camila, dear," Gloria entered the house, enveloping her sister-in-law in a cloud of expensive perfume. "I hope I'm not too early? You don't look well, sweetheart. Do you even look in the mirror once in a while?" Camila swallowed the barb and led her mother-in-law into the kitchen. Gloria looked around with a critical eye, and her perfectly lined eyebrows raised slightly. "My goodness, haven't you changed those awful curtains yet? I told you about it a month ago. They don't hang those in decent houses." "I was just about to wash them," Camila replied quietly, pouring her mother-in-law's coffee into her favorite cup, specially kept for such visits. "Wash them? Darling, they should be thrown away. I saw some beautiful curtains at the new store downtown. Sure, they're not cheap, but Mauricio deserves the best, don't you think?" At that moment, a sleepy Mauricio entered the kitchen. Seeing his mother, he immediately pulled himself up. "Mom, what are you doing here so early? Does a mother need an excuse to visit her favorite son?" Gloria stood up to hug him. "You've lost weight, honey. Is Camila not watching your diet at all?" Mauricio shrugged awkwardly, avoiding looking at his wife. "I work hard, Mom. It's a tough time at the hospital right now." Yes, I heard," Gloria perked up. "By the way, they say you have a new nurse? Marianne, I think. I met her at the supermarket yesterday, such a charming girl, and from a good family, from what I gather." Camila froze at the stove. Mauricio had never mentioned the new nurse back home. "Yes, she recently transferred to us from the capital," Mauricio replied, suddenly becoming very interested in the contents of his coffee cup. From the capital? How interesting! Gloria turned to her sister-in-law. Camila, dear, you should see this girl. A real beauty, and so educated, sophisticated. It's obvious, the capital's upbringing. Camila felt her hands begin to tremble. She put the pan on the stove a little louder than she should have. Can you believe she went to the most prestigious medical school? Gloria continued. Not like some people who can only lay out merchandise at the store. Mom, Mauricio said warningly. What? I'm just saying it's nice to see educated people in our provincial hospital. By the way, Mauricio, do you know she's single? At her age and with her looks, that's just amazing. Camila turned around abruptly. Shall I pour more coffee, Gloria? No, no, dear. I'm on a diet. Although, she gave her sister-in-law an appraising look. Some people could use a diet more than I could. Mauricio got up from the table. I need to take a shower. I have duty in an hour. On Sunday? Camila wondered. Yes, emergency surgery, he tossed as he left the kitchen. Gloria glanced at her son and lowered her voice. You know, Camila, when I was young, my mother-in-law gave me one piece of advice. If my husband starts staying late at work, you should look at yourself in the mirror. Men are simple creatures. They need beauty, grace, the ability to maintain a conversation, not just the ability to cook and do laundry. Camila silently wiped the countertop, counting to herself to 10. Marianne, for example, is always so elegantly dressed, and her makeup is flawless, and her hair is done, and you... Gloria was eloquently silent. The sound of water pouring in the shower stopped, and her mother-in-law rose. Well, I've got to go. Tell Mauricio I'll stop by next week. And think about what I said, dear. The truth is sometimes bitter, but helpful. When the door closed behind Gloria, Camila sank slowly into a chair. Scraps of the conversation swirled in her head. Marianne, beautiful, educated, from the capital, free. Mauricio came out of the bathroom already dressed, with damp hair. Mauricio, Camila called out to him, why didn't you tell me about the new nurse? He froze for a moment but didn't turn around. What's there to tell about her? Just an ordinary nurse of which there are many. But your mother seems to know her well. Mom knows a lot of people. He took the car keys. Don't start, please. I have a complicated surgery. On Sunday? Yes, on Sunday. I'm a doctor, in case you've forgotten. Illnesses don't have days off. He walked out, slamming the door harder than usual. Camila went to the window and watched his car pull out of the yard. At that moment, she noticed he was wearing the same shirt she'd given him for his last birthday, white with a thin blue stripe, his favorite. He'd only worn it on special occasions before. Camila slowly began clearing the table. Untouched breakfast, unfinished coffee, crumbs from the cookies her mother-in-law had brought. Every movement was difficult, as if the air around her had become thick and viscous. She walked over to the mirror in the hallway. Her hair really hadn't been styled in a long time. Her t-shirt was stretched out, and there were shadows under her eyes from lack of sleep. Maybe Gloria was right? Maybe she really had stopped looking after herself. Mauricio's phone beeped on the nightstand. He'd forgotten it in his haste. Camila picked it up, about to call her husband to warn him, but the screen lit up with a new message. The sender's name made her freeze. Marianne W. Her fingers trembled over the phone. One click and she'd know the truth. But did she have the right? Camila put the phone back down, but the numbers on the screen seemed imprinted in her memory. 8:47, Marianne W. One new message. 2 days had passed since her mother-in-law's visit. Camila couldn't find a place to be, constantly replaying in her head all of Gloria's hints and barbs. At the store, she had mixed up items twice and gave the wrong change to a customer. The thought of the message from Marianne on her husband's cell phone kept her on her toes. Tuesday evening, she decided to call Angela Mendoza. They weren't close friends, but they met occasionally at town fiestas, and Camila knew the head nurse had worked at the hospital for years. Angela? This is Camila Estrada. I apologize for the late call. Camila? Is something wrong? Angela could hear the concern in her voice. No, it's just, maybe we could get together? Talk? There was a pause, then Angela replied quietly, Come to Café La Rosa tomorrow after my shift. 5 o'clock. The next day dragged on interminably. Camila mechanically did her work, glancing at her watch every now and then. Finally, at 15 to 5, she closed up store and hurried to a cafe 2 blocks from the hospital. Angela was already waiting for her at a table in the far corner. In front of her was a cup of herbal tea, which she stirred slowly with a spoon. Her dark blue medical uniform seemed wrinkled after a long day of work. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Camila said, taking a seat. Angela looked at her carefully. I can guess what you want to talk about. The waitress brought a menu, but Camila shook her head. There was no appetite at all. Tell me about Mariana Velasquez, she asked as the waitress stepped away. Angela pressed her lips together. She showed up here 3 weeks ago, transferred from a clinic in the capital. Beautiful, smart, ambitious. Maybe a little too ambitious. What do you mean? You see, Camila, in small hospitals, everything is out in the open. I've been in medicine a long time and I've seen a lot. Angela took a sip of tea. At first it was just looks. Then she started volunteering to scrub in on all of your husband's surgeries. Stayed late when he was on call. Camila clenched her napkin under the table. So, what do you think? I think this girl knows what she wants, and she's used to getting what she wants. Angela was quiet for a moment. I saw them together in the cafeteria yesterday. They were sitting too close together, talking too quietly. Camila felt herself grow cold inside. And Mauricio, how is he? Mauricio has changed since she arrived. Became distracted, often smiling for no reason. The other day I saw him bring her coffee from that expensive coffee shop downtown. A picture surfaced in Camila's mind of Mauricio leaving early in the morning, ostensibly for emergency surgery, wearing his favorite shirt. You know, Angela continued, I worked with his father back in the day. I remember Mauricio as an intern, so idealistic, so believed in the Hippocratic oath. But men, they're all the same when it comes to young, beautiful women. Are you sure? Maybe we're exaggerating? Angela shook her head. I stayed late last night sorting out paperwork. They didn't know I was still in the hospital. I saw him stroking her cheek in the empty hallway. She snuggled up to him like a cat. Camila closed her eyes. A picture appeared before her inner mind. A white hospital corridor, her husband and the beautiful young woman her mother-in-law had spoken of so enthusiastically. What should I do, Angela? I can't advise, Camila, but, she lowered her voice, if you want to know more, come to the hospital by 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Mauricio's on duty, and I've seen Mariana change her schedule to be on the night shift too. Camila nodded slowly. Her fingers were still crumpling the napkin, turning it into a small, wet lump. Thank you, Angela, for your honesty. Don't thank me. I just can't stand decent people being cheated. Angela finished her tea and stood up. I have to go now. Be careful, Camila. I'm sorry I had to tell you all this. Left alone, Camila sat at the table for a long time, staring into Angela's empty cup. Outside the cafe window, people were going about their business. Cars were passing by. The sun was setting. Ordinary life went on, though her own world was slowly crumbling. Back home, she found another note from her husband. Night duty. Don't wait up. The handwriting was hurried, careless, as if he was in a hurry to leave. There was an untouched plate of lunch on the kitchen table. Camila went to the cabinet where she kept her jewelry. Taking out a small jewelry box, she opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring, Mauricio's first gift to her before they were married. He'd said then that he couldn't afford anything more expensive, but one day he'd overwhelm her with jewelry. She had smiled and replied that she didn't need jewelry, only his love. Now that memory was giving off bitterness. Camila slipped the ring onto her finger. It still fit perfectly. Then resolutely she took it off and put it back in the jewelry box. Tomorrow she would know the truth, the whole truth. She pulled dark clothes out of her closet that would be hard to spot at dusk, put a bottle of water and a pack of tissues in her bag. Then she sat down at the kitchen table and began to make a list of everything that needed to be done afterward. After her suspicions were confirmed, the plan was simple. Arrive at the hospital by 7 p.m., hide behind an old sycamore tree in the parking lot with a clear view of the service entrance, and wait. Wait for her husband and his young colleague to give themselves away. It was a chilly evening. Camila shivered, pulling her dark jacket tighter, and glanced at her watch. It was 15 to 7. She'd taken up position behind the plane tree in the hospital parking lot half an hour ago, not wanting to miss anything important. The old tree kept her safely hidden from casual glances, but gave her a good view of the hospital's service entrance and most of the parking lot. Several nurses, finishing up their afternoon shift, walked by. Camila pressed herself into the rough trunk of the tree when one of them turned her head in her direction. Her heart thudded in her chest, her mouth dry. She took a sip of water from the bottle she'd thoughtfully brought with her. At 7 o'clock, a familiar car pulled into the parking lot, Mauricio's white sedan. He parked in his usual spot, took a bag out of the trunk, and headed for the service entrance. Camila noted that he was wearing the same blue-striped shirt again. Another 10 minutes passed. A cab pulled into the parking lot and Mary Ann got out. Even in the twilight, it was noticeable how impeccable she looked. Strict suit, high heels, hair styled hair to hair. In her hand, she held a small paper bag from a well-known coffee shop. Camila counted to 300, slowly and methodically, as her father had taught her as a child when she needed to deal with excitement. Then she moved toward the service entrance. The doctor's wife's ID card that Mauricio had insisted she make 2 years ago was still valid. The guard merely nodded at her. The hospital corridors were quiet. Visiting hours were long over. Camila knew where her husband's office was, but she didn't go there. Instead, she went up to the second floor, where the resident's room was located. From behind the loose door came voices. "You brought my favorite coffee." Mauricio's voice sounded soft, intimate. "And you brought my favorite cakes," Mariana replied with a light laugh. "We've learned each other's tastes so well." A pause hung. Camila pressed herself against the wall next to the door, afraid to move. "Mary Ann!" Her husband's voice sounded hoarse. "We shouldn't be here. Angela might come back." "Angela went home, I saw. And anyway, everyone already knows everything, honey. Even your mom implied I'd be a better match for you." "My mother. She shouldn't have gotten involved." "Why? She's right. You deserve better than a life with a mere salesgirl. You're a talented surgeon. You could have had a brilliant career in the capital." Silence again. Then a sound like a kiss. "Let's go to my place," Mary Ann whispered. "We have a few hours before rounds. And if there's an emergency, you'll get a call. Come on, make up your mind. I bought new underwear." The sound of a chair being pushed back. Camila darted around the corner of the hallway, squeezed into a niche with medical equipment. Mauricio and Mariana walked past, her arm around him, snuggling closer than propriety would allow. Camila waited for their footsteps to subside and followed them. They got into Mauricio's car. Camila caught a cab that was just bringing someone to the hospital. "Follow that white car," she told the driver. "Just don't get too close." The cabbie nodded understandingly, probably not the first time he'd honored such a request. They drove for about 15 minutes until Mauricio's car stopped outside a three-story house in a respectable neighborhood. Camila asked the cab driver to wait around the corner. Mariana and Mauricio went up to the second floor. Lights came on in the windows. Camila slowly approached the house, stood so that she could see the windows of the apartment. Silhouettes moved behind the curtains. Here they hugged. Here she reached for his shirt. Camila didn't remember going up the stairs. She didn't remember finding the right door. She only woke up when her fist drummed on the wood. The door opened. Mauricio stood on the threshold, his shirt unbuttoned, his hair disheveled. His eyes widened with horror. "Camila?" She squeezed past him into the apartment. Marianne stood in the middle of the living room, hastily adjusting her blouse. "So that's how it is." Camila was surprised at how calm her voice sounded. "Emergency surgeries, night duty." "Camila, listen." Mauricio took a step toward her. "No, you listen. I know everything. About your meetings at the hospital, about the coffee and cakes, about your future plans in the capital." "What's the big deal?" Marianne intervened. "You must have realized that sooner or later it would happen. Look at yourself, an uneducated provincial. What could you possibly interest him in?" "Shut up," Mauricio bellowed, but it was too late. "No, let her speak." Camila turned to her husband's mistress. Let her say how long she planned this, how she rubbed her way into his mother's confidence, how— She didn't have time to finish. Mauricio grabbed her by the shoulders, turning her around. His face contorted with rage. "You've been spying on me? Spying? What was I supposed to do? You lied to me all the time. Get out of here." He shook her. "Get out. Don't you dare touch me." Camila lashed out, but he grabbed her by the hair. "I said get out of this house. You've ruined everything. Always ruining everything with your stupidity, your jealousy." He dragged her towards the door, continuing to shout insults. Camila fought back, but he was stronger. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Marianne standing leaning against the wall, watching with a slight chuckle. "You pathetic loser," Mauricio shouted, shoving her out the door. "You think I've been happy all these years? You think I enjoyed coming back to our shabby house, listening to you talk about store sales?" With one last push, Camila found herself on the landing. The door slammed in her face. She heard Marianne's laughter, then the sound of a kiss. Her legs jerked up. Camila slid down the wall, wrapping her arms around her knees. Her head was buzzing and her mouth tasted of blood. She'd bitten her lip when he dragged her by the hair. There were muffled voices coming from the apartment, laughter. Then it all went quiet. Camila slowly stood up. As she walked down the stairs, she held on to the banister. Her legs weren't obeying well. The cab driver was still waiting around the corner. Seeing her condition, he opened the door silently. "To my father's," she whispered. "Villa Libertadores, House 28. Esteban Ortiz's house rose at the end of Villa Libertadores, a two-story mansion with a manicured garden and wrought iron gates. The cab driver stopped at the entrance. Camila paid with shaky hands, scattering her change across the seat. The driver silently helped her collect the money and, without counting, tucked it into his pocket. "Everything will be fine, Señora," he said quietly as he opened the door for her. Camila pressed the bell button at the gate. A minute passed that seemed like an eternity before her father appeared on the porch. Even at this late hour, Esteban Ortiz looked collected, in homemade pants and shirt with a book in his hands. "Camila?" He gazed into the darkness, then quickly descended the steps. "My God, what happened?" She couldn't speak. The tears she'd been holding back all the way finally broke through. Her father picked her up, almost carrying her into the house. A dim light burned in the spacious hallway, smelling of leather furniture and her father's favorite coffee. "Maria!" Esteban called out. "Bring hot tea and a first aid kit." The elderly housekeeper, who had worked in the house for many years, hurried to the call. Seeing Camila's condition, she splayed her hands and rushed into the kitchen. The father sat his daughter in a chair in his study and turned on the table lamp. In the bright light, he finally caught a glimpse of her face. The swollen eyes swollen with tears, the bitten lip, the mussed hair. "Who did this?" His voice became harsh. "Mauricio?" Camila nodded, trying to control the trembling in her hands. Maria brought the tea and first aid kit, silently placed the tray on the table and walked out, quietly closing the door. "Tell me." Esteban sat down across from his daughter, clutching the armrests of the chair. And she did tell. About the suspicions, about the conversation with Angela, about the surveillance, about how she'd caught them together, how Mauricio had thrown her out the door, how he'd yelled and insulted her. Her father's face grew darker with each word. "So the young nurse," he muttered through gritted teeth. "And Gloria, of course, knew all about it, covered it up." "Dad, I don't know what to do." Camila cradled her teacup in her arms, trying to warm herself. "He's changed so much. It's like he's become a different person." "No, honey," Esteban shook his head. "He hasn't changed. He's always been like that. He's just been good at hiding it. True nature shows itself not when things are good, but when a man thinks he can get something better." He stood up, walked to the window. The lights of the nighttime city flickered behind the glass. A car honked somewhere in the distance. "My fault," he said without turning around. "I should have looked more closely at him. But he seemed so upright, decent, a good doctor from a decent family. It wasn't your fault, Dad." "It is. A father's supposed to protect his daughter. And I let it happen." Esteban turned around abruptly. "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe a month, maybe more." "And all that time he's been living with you, sharing your bed, taking your care." Camila shuddered. She remembered all those evenings cooking his favorite meals, washing his shirts, waiting up late, and him at the same time. "Do you know who the head doctor of the hospital is?" my father suddenly asked. "Ricardo Santos." "That's right. He and I have been friends for 30 years. We started a business together, then he went into medicine. His daughter went to high school with you, remember?" Camila nodded. She remembered Ricardo, a tall, gray-haired man who sometimes came to their house for family holidays. "I'm going to visit an old friend tomorrow," Esteban continued. "I think he'll be interested to know how his employees do their night duty." "Papa, don't—" "I do, Camila. I won't stand by this time. People like Mauricio need to be held accountable for their actions." He walked over to his daughter, gently touching her tangled hair. "Now you need to rest. Your room is always ready." "Can I just sit here, in your office?" "Of course, sweetheart." Esteban settled behind his massive desk, pulled out his cell phone. Camila curled up in the chair, covered by the plaid the caring Maria had brought. The familiar sounds from her childhood, the ticking of the antique clock on the wall, the rustling of papers, the tapping of the phone keys were gradually calming her down. She watched her father writing something in his notebook, making calls, speaking in a quiet but firm voice. His presence always had that effect on her. It brought back a sense of security, a confidence that everything would be all right. At one point, Maria knocked softly on the door. "Señor Ortiz, I have prepared a room for Señorita Camila." "Thank you, Maria, and bring more tea, please." The housekeeper nodded and silently departed. Esteban turned to his daughter. "You need to sleep, sweetheart." "I'm afraid, Papa," Camila admitted quietly. "I'm afraid he's going to come here." "He won't," Esteban replied stiffly. "And if he does, he'll regret it. I've already called security. They've been alerted." He was silent for a moment, then added more gently, "Everything will be all right, Camila. Things will be different now. I promise." Camila nodded but didn't move from her seat. Esteban didn't insist. He continued working, glancing at his daughter from time to time. Gradually, her breathing became more even as she dozed off in the chair, feeling safe for the first time in a long time. Esteban carefully covered her with a second blanket, then pulled a business card with the hospital's logo on it from his desk drawer. Ricardo Santos, Chief Medical Officer, the inscription read. He placed the card in front of him and began to map out tomorrow's conversation. His daughter had suffered long enough. It was time to put an end to it. The morning at Esteban Ortiz's house started early. The first rays of sunlight streaming through the heavy curtains of the study woke Camila. She didn't immediately realize where she was. The unfamiliar angle of the room, the two plaids that covered her neck, which was stiff from the uncomfortable position in the chair. Her father was already sitting at the table, impeccably dressed in a gray business suit. In front of him was a cup of fresh coffee, which had obviously just been brought in by Maria. The aroma still lingered in the air. "Good morning," Esteban said, noticing that his daughter was awake. "How are you feeling?" Camila ran her hand over her face. Her eyelids were heavy, swollen with tears. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "It's like none of this is happening to me. Maria made breakfast. You need to eat." "I don't want to." "That's out of the question," her father said softly but firmly. "You haven't eaten since yesterday morning." A set table awaited them in the dining room. Freshly squeezed orange juice, warm buns, poached eggs that Maria had prepared in a special way. Camila forced herself to eat a little, more to please her father and the housekeeper who was peering worriedly from the kitchen. "What are you going to do?" Camila asked as her father finished his coffee. "I have a meeting with Ricardo at 9 in the morning. He's already waiting for me." "You called him?" "Yes. Last night when you fell asleep. Ricardo's an old-school man for him. The hospital's reputation comes first." Esteban blotted his lips with a napkin and stood up from the table. "Stay here. Get some rest. Take a bath. Maria will take care of everything." Camila nodded. The thought of going home sent an inner shiver down her spine. At exactly 9 o'clock, Esteban Ortiz entered the office of the chief physician at San Jose del Guaviare Hospital. Ricardo Santos greeted him like an old friend, with open arms and a smile. But the smile quickly faded when he saw the look on Esteban's face. "What's wrong, my friend?" Ricardo pointed to the visitor's chair. "Your call yesterday alarmed me." Esteban sat down, straightened the crease in his pants. "Ricardo, we've known each other for 30 years. I've never asked you for personal favors, but today I'm here as a father." The chief physician frowned. "Is this about Camila?" "And your surgeon, Mauricio Estrada." For the next half hour, Esteban recounted, calmly, methodically, without omitting details, about the affair with the new nurse, about the nightly on-calls, about yesterday's incident. With each word, Ricardo's face grew darker and darker. "So you're saying he hit her?" the head doctor interjected when Esteban finished his story. "Dragged her by the hair out of the apartment of that nurse, insulted her, humiliated." Ricardo stood up from his desk, strode around the office. "I've always prided myself on the fact that my hospital employs decent people, that we're like a family, and now you know the truth." "Yes, I do," Ricardo paused at the window. "And I'm grateful for it. Though, admittedly, I'd rather not know." He turned to Esteban. "What do you want me to do?" "Whatever you think is right." Ricardo returned to his desk, pressed the selector button. "Have Nurse Velasquez come to me. Immediately." A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Mariana entered, impeccable as always, in a perfectly pressed uniform. When she saw Esteban, she turned slightly pale but quickly pulled herself together. "You wanted to see me, Dr. Santos?" "Yes, Señorita Velasquez. Have a seat." She sat on the edge of the chair, folding her hands in her lap. "Tell me, how long have you been working at our hospital?" 3 weeks, senor. And how are you enjoying your stay with us? It's fine. The staff is very friendly. Especially Dr. Estrada, isn't it? Ricardo interrupted her. Mariana tensed up. I don't know what you mean. You all know perfectly well. The head doctor's voice became hard. I've already heard about your joint duty. That's slander. Who are you? Quiet. Ricardo slammed his palm on the table. I have witnesses. There's the head nurse's testimony. And there's... He cast a glance at Esteban. The injured party. Marianne pressed her lips together. If you mean Dr. Estrada's wife, it was her own fault. She failed to keep her husband. Get out of my office, Ricardo said quietly. And don't bother writing your resignation letter. I'll prepare the order for your dismissal myself, for professional unfitness and breach of ethical standards. You can't. I can. I'm doing it. Now go. Your papers will be mailed to you. As the door closed behind Mariana, Ricardo pressed the selector button again. Send Dr. Estrada in. Mauricio showed up 10 minutes later. He looked tired after a night on duty, but he held himself with confidence. Upon seeing his father-in-law, he froze for a moment, but quickly managed himself. Good morning, Dr. Santos, Senor Ortiz. Have a seat, Estrada. Ricardo pointed to the chair where Mariana had recently sat. We're having a serious conversation. Mauricio sat down, spreading the hem of his robe. I'm listening to you. No, I'm the one listening to you. Perhaps you can explain why your wife came to your father's house yesterday wearing bruises. Mauricio turned pale. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Esteban pitched forward. You mean you didn't pull my daughter's hair? You didn't throw her out of your mistress's apartment? Look, this is a private matter. No, Estrada, Ricardo interrupted him. It's no longer a personal matter. It's a matter of honor for the hospital, my hospital. He pulled some papers from a desk drawer. I've already signed the dismissal order for Señorita Velázquez. Now it's your turn. What? Mauricio jumped up. You can't fire me. I'm the best surgeon in this hospital. I can, and I'm doing it. You can look for work in the capital since you're so eager to go there, but there's nothing more for you to do here. Is this about her? Mauricio turned to Esteban. Your daughter complained to Daddy and now you're ruining my career. No, Mauricio, Esteban replied calmly. This is all because of you, only because of you. There was bustle in the house of Gloria Quintero de Estrada. Consuela, an elderly maid, was darting between the kitchen and the living room, arranging plates and laying out utensils. The lady of the house herself directed the process from her favorite armchair, occasionally clucking her tongue and pointing out places that needed to be rearranged or rearranged. Consuela, the red wine flutes closer to the center. And where are the flowers I ordered? They were supposed to bring them an hour ago. At that moment, the doorbell rang. The delivery man had finally delivered a large basket of white lilies. Gloria meticulously inspected each flower before allowing Consuela to compose the bouquet. Senora, the maid began cautiously as she arranged the flowers, pardon my curiosity, but why such a festive table? After all, Senor Mauricio. Exactly, Consuela. Gloria interrupted her. My son has finally done the right thing. That shopgirl was never worthy of our family, and Marianne is quite another matter. Educated, from a good family. Her father is a prominent lawyer in the capital. Consuela remained silent, but her wrinkled face expressed clear disapproval. She'd worked at Gloria's house for years and remembered the first time Camila had crossed the threshold of the house. A young, glowing bride. A phone call interrupted the preparations. Gloria grabbed the receiver when she saw her son's name on the screen. Mauricio, honey. I'm just preparing the holiday dinner. You have no idea how wonderful the lilies I ordered are. Mariana said they were her favorite flowers. Mom, her son's voice sounded strained. I've been fired. Gloria froze with the phone in her hand. What? Fired how? Who dared? Ricardo Santos, and Mariana too. But why? His father-in-law came to see him this morning, told him everything. Gloria pounded her fist on the arm of her chair in fury. That upstart Ortiz, how dare he meddle in our family's affairs? It's okay, honey. We're not going to let it go. I have connections in the medical community. Mom, stop it, Mauricio said tiredly. It's over. I'm going to pack my things and move in with you for a few days until I find a new job. Of course, honey. Your room is always ready, and Marianne can come over for lunch. I've already prepared everything. Mom, I said enough. Marianne isn't coming. She's already packing to go back to the capital. What? But what about, you must go with her. You'll have so many more opportunities in the capital. I'll think about it later. Right now I need to pack. Gloria set the phone down on her lap. Her carefully thought-out plan was crumbling before her eyes. So much effort, and all in vain. She had specifically met Marianne when she learned of her transfer to their hospital. She had specially praised her in front of her son, hinted at her loneliness, arranged chance meetings. Consuela, she shouted, get all this stuff off the table. There will be no dinner. The maid began clearing away the cutlery and tablecloth, glancing sidelong at her hostess. Gloria sat in her chair, drumming her fingers on the armrest. Suddenly she straightened up. No, wait. Leave everything as it is. And call the neighbors, the Morales couple, and the Gutierrez family. Invite them to dinner. But, Señora, you said, I changed my mind. The dinner will be held, since everything is ready, and then you have to explain the situation to people. Before this, that woman spread her gossip all over town. Gloria stood up and walked over to the mirror, fixing her already flawless hair. I'll tell them the truth. About how she's been harassing my son with nagging, how she spied on him, made jealous scenes, how she drove him to the point where he was forced to seek understanding on the side. Consuela shook her head, but remained silent. She knew her mistress too well. Once Gloria Quintero had gotten something into her head, it was impossible to change her mind. Gloria, meanwhile, continued to talk to herself, looking in the mirror. Yes, that's right. Poor boy. He suffered so much all these years. And that ingrate. And now her father, that nouveau riche, dares to interfere. He took away my son's job. But nothing. We'll see whose will take whose. She turned to the maid. Consuela, get that bottle of red wine from the cellar that I've been saving for a special occasion. And prepare the appetizers, canapés with salmon, tartlets with caviar. Everything has to be perfect. The doorbell rang. It was Mauricio with a suitcase in his hands. His face was gaunt with shadows under his eyes. Gloria rushed to her son. Honey, I'm so glad you came. I was just inviting the neighbors over for dinner. Mom, I'm not in the mood for guests. Nonsense. You need to unwind. And then people need to know the truth. I won't let my son be the talk of the town. Mauricio sank tiredly into his chair. Do as you wish, Mother. I don't care anymore. Gloria stroked his head as if he were a child. Don't worry, honey. We'll get through it all. And that girl, she'll be sorry she dared to hurt my boy. Outside the window, voices were heard as the first guests arrived. Gloria hurriedly adjusted her dress and headed for the door. Consuela, serve the hors d'oeuvre, and don't forget the wine. The maid took one last look at the table, which was laden with expensive dishes and exquisite dishes. The white lilies in the center of the table seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. Everything was ready for the play that Gloria Quintero de Estrada had planned, a play in which her son would play the role of the unfortunate victim and Camila the role of the villain. Camila stood in front of her house, clutching her keys in her hands. After talking to her father, she decided to go back for her things. She needed to get her documents and essentials. The front door gave in with the usual creak that Mauricio had promised to fix, but never did. The house smelled musty. No one had opened the windows since yesterday. The untouched cup of coffee she'd left on the kitchen table before she'd gone to follow her husband was still there. A scorched oven mitt dangled from the stove knob, such a familiar homemade detail that now made her heart ache. Camila went methodically around the rooms, gathering her belongings into a large travel bag. Papers from her dresser drawer, a favorite photo of her parents, a few dresses, shoes, makeup. She tried to act quickly, not allowing herself to stop and indulge in memories. Suddenly, voices came from the street. Camila went to the window and saw her neighbor, Senora Morales, walking toward her mother-in-law's house in her Sunday best dress. She was followed by the Gutierrez couple, he in an ironed suit, she in an elegant white dress. Gloria's throwing a reception. Camila's mind raced. She knew her mother-in-law. She never missed an opportunity to turn any situation into a performance, where she was the main director. She must have already prepared her own version of events to present her son in a favorable light. Camila looked at herself in the hallway mirror. The bruise on her cheekbone was almost invisible, but her eyes were still swollen with tears. She pulled out foundation from her purse and began to hastily conceal the traces of yesterday's events. The decision came suddenly. She would go there. She wouldn't let Gloria blacken her name, paint her as a hysterical, jealous woman who'd ruined the career of a talented doctor. People need to know the truth. Camila went up to the second floor of her and Mauricio's bedroom and opened the closet. Hanging in the back was the dark blue dress she'd bought for last year's Christmas dinner at the hospital. Strict, elegant, yet figure-emphasizing. Gloria had frowned at the time and said it was too pretentious for a simple shop girl. After quickly changing her clothes and styling her hair, Camila took another look in the mirror. Her eyes sparkled with determination, her back straight, her chin proudly raised. She was no longer the intimidated woman who had been dragged out of someone else's apartment by her hair yesterday. Her mother-in-law's house was 3 blocks away. All the way there, Camila rehearsed to herself what she would say. No hysterics, no tears, just the facts, the cold, hard facts. Several cars were already parked outside Gloria's house. From the open windows came voices and the clinking of glasses. Camila climbed the steps and firmly pressed the bell. Consuela opened the door. Seeing Camila, the elderly maid turned pale. "Señora Camila." "Hello, Consuela. I've come for a family dinner." Gloria's voice came from the living room. "Who is it, Consuela?" It's... The maid stammered. Camila gently dismissed her and entered the house. In the living room, the neighbors, Mauricio and Gloria, sat at the festively set table. At the sight of her daughter-in-law, her mother-in-law froze with her glass raised. "You? How dare you come?" "Why not?" Camila calmly replied. "I am still your sister-in-law, and as far as I'm concerned, this is a family dinner." Senora Morales choked on her wine. The Gutierrez couple looked at each other. Mauricio turned pale and looked away. "You are no longer a member of this family." Gloria set her glass down with such force that the wine spilled out onto the white tablecloth. "After what you did to my son." "And what exactly did I do, Gloria?" Camila took a step forward. "Tell everyone. Tell us how your son spent his night watch at the young nurse's apartment, how you yourself helped arrange their meetings." "Don't you dare!" Mauricio jumped up. "Don't you dare accuse my mother." "How about you tell the truth, honey?" Camila turned to her husband. "About how you dragged me out of your mistress's apartment by my hair, how you insulted and humiliated me." A dead silence hung in the living room. Senora Morales pressed her palm to her mouth. Senor Gutierrez frowned, looking at Mauricio, who stood clenching his fists. "Lies!" Gloria shrieked. "It's all lies! My son never—" "The bruises haven't come off yet, Gloria," Camila interrupted her. "Would you like me to show you? Or maybe we should call Angela Mendoza. She saw them together at the hospital. Or should we ask Consuela, who ordered the white lilies, Mariana's favorite flowers?" Consuela, still standing in the doorway, was nervously rubbing her apron. Gloria threw her an angry glare. "Get out of my house," hissed her mother-in-law. "Now." "Oh no, Gloria. You'll listen to me now. Everybody will listen. I have kept silent for 5 years, endured your hints, your barbs, your contempt, but not anymore." Camila turned to the neighbors. "Do you know what Gloria said when she found out about her son's affair? She congratulated him, said that this woman, Marianne, was far more suited for her precious boy than some mere shop girl." "Camila, please," Mauricio began. "No, darling, now you be quiet. I saw you kissing her. I heard you making plans to move to the capital. And then—" Her voice trembled, but she quickly pulled herself together. "And then you showed your true colors. The one your mother worked so hard to help you hide all these years." Gloria rose from the table. "That's enough. I'm not going to allow some—" "Sit down, Gloria," Señor Gutierrez said suddenly. "Let him finish." The mother-in-law faltered. The authority of an honorable neighbor, a member of the city council, was too high to ignore. Gloria Quintero de Estrada's living room, always impeccably furnished and cleaned, now resembled a battlefield. The white tablecloth with a blurring wine stain, the uneaten appetizers on silver platters, the overturned salt shaker, all spoke of the idyll of a family dinner suddenly disrupted. Camila stood in the middle of the room, feeling the stares of everyone present. Her dark blue dress contrasted sharply with the pastel colors of the living room, as if emphasizing the foreignness of the hostess in this house. "Since Señor Gutierrez insists," Camila squared her shoulders, "I will continue. Do you know why my husband was fired from the hospital today? Not because my father has influence. It's because Dr. Santos doesn't tolerate lies and betrayal in his staff." Gloria, forced to sit down at her neighbor's insistence, clutched her napkin in her hands. "Your father is just a jealous upstart. He could never accept that his daughter married into our family." "Your family?" Camila grinned bitterly. "You are so proud of your family name, your position. And do you know what your blameless son has been doing all these weeks? He's been betraying more than just me. He's been betraying his oath as a doctor by using the hospital for dates." Señora Morales nervously adjusted her pearl necklace. "Child, maybe we shouldn't—" "It is worth it, Señora Morales. You love the truth, don't you? You always said that lying was the worst sin, so here it is, the truth. Your dear neighbors, Gloria and her son, have built their lives on lies." Mauricio, who until that moment had been silent, suddenly jumped up. "Enough! You only came here to cause a scandal." "No, honey. I came here for justice, and for everyone to know what you're really like." Gloria stood up, her perfectly styled hair disheveled. You're just jealous. Jealous of Marianne. Young, beautiful, educated. What can you do against her? Your job in a cheap store? Your plain manners?" There was a heavy silence in the room. The Gutierrez couple looked at each other with evident disapproval. Señora Morales turned pale. Such blatant rudeness was unusual even for Gloria. Camila slowly turned to her mother-in-law. "You know, Gloria, all these years I've been trying to understand. Why do you hate me so much? Is it because I don't come from a rich family? Or because I didn't ingratiate myself to you like the others, and now I realize you were just afraid." "Afraid? Iya?" Gloria laughed a fake laugh. "What was I afraid of? That your son could have been happy with a mere woman, that all your ideas about social status, about proper marriages were just tinsel, and when Marianne came along, so convenient, so right in every way, you jumped at the chance to set things right." Consuela, still standing in the doorway, sobbed softly. She remembered how Gloria had planned her son's meetings with Mariana, how she had praised her at every opportunity, how she had rejoiced when she noticed the first signs of Mauricio's interest. "You don't understand anything!" Gloria pounded her fist on the table. I wanted the best for my son, so he could be proud of his wife, so he could build a career in the capital. And what about love, Mom? Mauricio suddenly asked quietly. Have you ever asked what I want? Love? Gloria grimaced contemptuously. Love passes, honey, and social status stays. Look at Marianne, she could open such doors for you. Which are now forever closed, Camila put in. Because your scheming has led to only one thing, disgrace. Now the whole town will know how the heir to the Estrada family dishonored his name. Gloria turned white with rage. How dare you? This is all your fault. You and your father. You ruined my son's career. No, Gloria. You ruined it with your manipulations, your lies. And you know what? I feel sorry for you. I pity a woman who is so obsessed with social status that she's willing to sacrifice her own son's happiness. Senor Gutierrez coughed. I think it's time for us to leave. This is a family matter. No, no, stay, Gloria exclaimed. Let everyone see how this woman is trying to smear our family. Family? Camila grinned bitterly. What family, Gloria? The one where a mother pits her son against his wife, where intrigue and lies are considered the norm, where physical violence is justified by social status. She turned to her neighbors. Do you know that yesterday your esteemed neighbor, Dr. Estrada, dragged me down the stairs by my hair, that he shouted insults, that his mistress stood and laughed while watching this? Senora Gutierrez gave a quiet gasp. Her husband frowned even more. Lies! Gloria screamed again. It's all lies. My son never— Shut up, Mom, Mauricio said suddenly and sharply. Just shut up. He looked 10 years older, gaunt, with circles under his eyes. You know, Camila's right, he continued quietly. You've always tried to control my life, always knew better what I needed, and I've let you do that. Gloria gasped. Mauricio, how can you— I can, Mom. And you know what? Mariana is just like you, calculating, cold, thinking only of status and money. I just haven't seen it before. There was absolute silence in the living room. Consuela could be heard rattling dishes in the kitchen, trying to drown out the voices coming in. Camila took a step toward the door. I've said everything I wanted to say. Now you know the truth. Whether you can believe it or not is up to you. But remember, the story of how the esteemed Dr. Estrada and his mother destroyed their family for status and ambition will now be the story of the entire city. She turned to Gloria. And to you, dear mother-in-law, I want to say thank you. You've opened my eyes, showed me what good family people can really be like. Gloria stood leaning back in her chair, her face flushed red. You're going to regret this, do you hear me? You're going to regret it. No, Gloria, you're the one who's going to regret it. Every time the neighbors avert their eyes when they meet, every time they whisper behind your back in church, every time your son asks for a recommendation for a new job. At that moment, the front door swung open. All heads turned toward the front door. Esteban Ortiz stood on the threshold of the living room holding a leather briefcase. His strict suit and straight posture contrasted sharply with the general disorder in the room. Behind him loomed a confused Consuela, who clearly hadn't had time to alert her host to the new guest. I hope I'm not late for the family feast, he pronounced with cold politeness. Gloria jerked as if from a blow. You? How dare you? I have every right to be here, Esteban interrupted her, walking into the room. Especially considering the circumstances. He placed his briefcase on the table, right next to the untouched dessert. The white lilies in the vase seemed to wilt under his heavy gaze. What other circumstances? Mauricio tried to make his voice firm, but it was unconvincing. Esteban leisurely unzipped his briefcase and pulled out several documents in official folders bearing the hospital's seals. This morning I had a very enlightening conversation with my old friend, Dr. Santos. We discussed professional ethics. He spread the papers out on the table, carefully straightening each sheet. Here is your dismissal order, Mauricio, and the dismissal of Señorita Velázquez for breach of professional ethics, using your position for personal gain, and, most interestingly, for falsifying night duty reports. Señor Gutierrez stepped forward, peering into the documents. Falsifying reports? Exactly, Esteban nodded. It turns out that Dr. Estrada was regularly reported for night duty that he didn't actually perform, and Señorita Velázquez confirmed those notes. Gloria turned even paler. That's slander. My son is a respected doctor. Was a respected doctor, Esteban corrected her. That is now a thing of the past, as is his career in our town. He pulled out another document. And this is the Medical Association's official notice of malpractice. Copies will be sent to all hospitals in the region. Mauricio collapsed into a chair, covering his face with his hands. His fancy suit he had worn for his mother's party now seemed like a ridiculous masquerade outfit. "You have no right!" Gloria shrieked. "You're just being vindictive." "No, Señora Quintero," Esteban replied calmly. "I am merely restoring justice and protecting my daughter, what any father should do." He turned to the neighbors. "Señor and Señora Gutierrez, Señora Morales, I apologize that you had to witness this unpleasant scene, but perhaps it is for the best. Now you know the truth." Señora Morales nervously rubbed her napkin. "My God, what a scandal! Such a respected family." "Exactly," Esteban nodded. "A family that covered up lies, betrayal, and violence with beautiful words about status and position in society." Camila stood looking at her husband. His slumped figure, his slumped shoulders, everything spoke of defeat. Where was the confident doctor who just yesterday had yelled at her and shoved her out the door? "Mauricio," she called softly. He lifted his head. His eyes read a mixture of shame and anger. "I loved you," Camila said simply. "Really loved you. Despite your mother, her constant nagging, all the difficulties. But you chose a different path, and now reap the rewards." Gloria, who had been standing leaning on the back of the chair all this time, suddenly straightened up. "Get out of my house! Everybody out!" "Don't worry, Señora Quintero." Esteban neatly put the documents back in his briefcase. "We're leaving now. Camila, have you packed your things?" "Yes, Papa, they're in the car." She took one last look around the living room. The luxurious furniture, the expensive paintings on the walls, the exquisite dishes on the table, all the things that Gloria was so proud of that she considered a sign of superiority over ordinary people. "You know," Camila said, turning to her mother-in-law, "I always thought that one day you would accept me, that you'd see me not as just a saleswoman, but as someone who genuinely loved your son, but you were too busy maintaining the image of the perfect family to notice real feelings." Gloria was silent, her lips turned into a thin line. Señor Gutierrez rose from the table. "We'll go too. We thank you for the invitation." His wife hurriedly followed him without even saying goodbye to her hostess. Señora Morales shuffled toward the exit, muttering something about a headache. Only Gloria, Mauricio, Camila, and her father remained in the living room. Consuela sobbed quietly in the doorway, wiping her eyes with her apron. "Come, Camila," Esteban said softly. "There's nothing more to do here." She nodded and headed for the exit. On the threshold, she stopped. "Goodbye, Gloria. I hope you find a worthy mate for your son now, one as cold and calculating as yourself." They went outside. The sun was slipping toward sunset, coloring the sky orange. Somewhere in the distance, the bells of the local church were ringing, calling the congregation to evening service. An ordinary evening in a small Colombian town where everyone knows each other and news spreads at the speed of wildfire. "Are you okay?" Esteban asked, opening the car door. Camila looked at the house where she had lived the last 5 years of her life, at the windows where the lights were still on, at the white lilies visible through the tulle curtains. "Yes, Daddy. I'm all right now." They got into the car. Esteban started the engine and the car started, driving them away from Gloria Quintero de Estrada's house, the house where dreams of marital happiness were shattered, but a new, stronger Camila was born.